I should have known something was wrong when Robert Chen called me into his office on a Friday afternoon. In 8 years of working at Chen Construction, our mandatory performance reviews had always been scheduled for Monday mornings, giving us the weekend to process any feedback. But there he sat behind his massive mahogany desk, the same one his father had used to build the company 40 years ago, with my personnel files spread out like evidence at a trial. "Jennifer, have a seat," he said without looking up from the papers. His voice carried that particular tone I learned to recognize over the years, the one that meant he'd already made a decision and was simply going through the motions of justifying it. I settled into the leather chair across from him, smoothing my blazer and placing my portfolio on my lap. After 8 years as the company's senior project manager, I knew these meetings by heart. My numbers were exceptional, my client satisfaction ratings were the highest in the company, and I just completed the Harbor Point development 3 months ahead of schedule and $200,000 under budget. This should have been a celebration of my promotion to partner, something Robert had been promising for the past 2 years. "I've been reviewing your performance metrics," Robert continued, finally meeting my eyes. At 62, he still cut an imposing figure, his silver hair perfectly styled and his custom suits impeccably tailored. "Your work has been adequate." Adequate. The word hit me like a slap. I brought in $3.2 million in new contracts this year alone, managed 15 successful projects simultaneously, and maintained a safety record that was the envy of every construction company in the state. Adequate didn't begin to describe my contributions to Chen Construction. However, Robert continued, leaning back in his chair with the satisfied expression of a man about to deliver unwelcome news. "I've been reconsidering the partnership position we discussed." My stomach dropped, but I kept my expression neutral. "Oh, what specific concerns do you have?" Robert waved his hand dismissively, as if my question was irrelevant. "Let's be realistic, Jennifer. This company needs strong male leadership, and family loyalty matters more than your college degrees. David has been with us for 5 years now, and it's time he took on more responsibility." David, my husband, the man who'd started working at his father's company straight out of college with no construction experience, no business training, and a work ethic that could charitably be described as inconsistent. The same David who'd spent the last month calling in sick to play golf with his college friends, leaving me to cover his projects on top of my own. "I see," I said carefully, my mind racing. "And what role would you envision for me going forward?" "You'll continue as senior project manager, of course. We value your organizational skills." Robert's tone made it clear that he considered my MBA in construction management and my certification as a project management professional to be little more than fancy paperwork. "David will be taking over the strategic planning and client relations. It's important that our clients see a Chen family member as their primary contact." I felt a familiar burn of anger in my chest, the same feeling I'd been swallowing for years whenever Robert made his casual comments about women in construction or his pointed remarks about family loyalty. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't just undermining my expertise. He was stealing my future. "Robert," I said, choosing my words carefully, "my performance metrics speak for themselves. I've exceeded every target you set, brought in more revenue than any other project manager in the company's history, and maintained client relationships that have resulted in repeat business worth millions. What specific deficiencies in my work are driving this decision?" Robert's jaw tightened. He didn't like being questioned, especially not by women, and especially not by family members who were supposed to simply accept his decisions with gratitude. "Jennifer, I've been in this business for 35 years. I built this company from nothing, and I know what it takes to succeed in construction. This industry respects strength, tradition, and family values. Clients want to work with someone who understands the Chen legacy, not someone who thinks spreadsheets and college degrees can replace decades of experience." The irony wasn't lost on me that Robert's decades of experience had resulted in a company that was hemorrhaging money due to cost overruns, safety violations, and poor project management, problems I'd been quietly solving for years while he took credit for the successes. "I understand your perspective," I said, opening my portfolio and pulling out a manila folder. "Perhaps we should discuss some of the structural challenges the company has been facing." Robert's eyes narrowed as he watched me place the folder on his desk. "What are you talking about?" Well, for instance, the Harbor Point project that came in so far under budget. Would you like to know why we saved so much money? Because of good management, Robert said quickly. David did excellent work on that project. I nodded slowly. Actually, David was only involved in the initial client meeting. I handled everything else, including discovering that your previous project manager had been inflating material costs and pocketing the difference. The savings came from implementing proper vendor verification procedures and catching what appears to be systematic fraud. Robert's face flushed red. That's a serious accusation, Jennifer. I hope you have proof. I do. I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of invoices, receipts, and bank records. I've been documenting discrepancies for the past 6 months. False invoices, inflated material costs, payments to shell companies that don't actually provide services. The pattern suggests someone has been embezzling from the company for years. The color drained from Robert's face as he recognized some of the documents. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for his reading glasses. Where did you get these? I'm a certified public accountant, Robert. Before I went into construction management, I spent 5 years doing forensic auditing for corporate fraud cases. When I noticed irregularities in our project costs, I did what I was trained to do. I investigated. Robert flipped through the documents, his breathing becoming more labored with each page. I watched him recognize invoice numbers, see the discrepancies in the dates, understand the implications of what I'd uncovered. This could be a misunderstanding, he stammered. Accounting errors, maybe some vendor mistakes. It's not a misunderstanding, I said quietly. It's systematic fraud totaling approximately $850,000 over the past 3 years. The shell companies trace back to accounts controlled by management-level employees with access to vendor approval systems. Robert set the papers down with shaking hands. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly, I said, my voice calm but firm. I've been protecting this company for years. Every project that came in on time and under budget, every safety violation that was quietly corrected before OSHA notice, every client relationship that was salvaged after poor management decisions. That was me, not David, not family loyalty. Me? Robert stared at me across his desk, and for the first time in 8 years, I saw fear in his eyes. I've prepared 2 sets of documents. I continued, pulling out another folder. This set goes to the district attorney's office and includes a detailed analysis of the fraud, timeline of discovery, and recommendations for prosecution. This set, I place a second folder on his desk, goes to the state contractor licensing board with documentation of safety violations, illegal subcontracting practices, and failure to maintain proper insurance coverage. Jennifer, surely we can work something out. I'm not finished. I pulled out a third folder. This set goes to our 5 largest clients, detailing how their projects were affected by the fraudulent billing practices and recommending they seek legal counsel regarding potential overcharges. Robert's hands were visibly shaking now. You're talking about destroying the company, your own husband's inheritance. I'm talking about accountability, I said. David will inherit a legitimate business or he'll inherit nothing. But he won't inherit a criminal enterprise built on fraud and covered up by family loyalty. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of traffic outside and the hum of the air conditioning. Robert aged 10 years in the space of that pause, his commanding presence crumbling as he realized the scope of what I'd discovered. What do you want? He asked again, his voice barely above a whisper. I want the partnership we agreed to 2 years ago. I want my name on the company letterhead as equity partner. I want signing authority on all contracts over $100,000, and I want David to report to me until he demonstrates the competence necessary to handle client relationships. David will never accept that arrangement. David will accept whatever arrangement keeps him out of prison, I said calmly, because here's what you don't understand, Robert. I've been covering for his mistakes for 5 years. Every project he's touched has required intervention to prevent disaster. The Riverside Mall delay that cost us $300,000 in penalties. That was David approving substandard materials to save money. The Westbrook housing development that failed inspection 3 times. David signed off on electrical work that didn't meet code. Robert stared at me in shock. You knew about all of this? I documented all of this. Every email, every decision, every conversation where David demonstrated gross incompetence, and I had to step in to prevent catastrophic failure. I have a paper trail showing that without my intervention, this company would have been shut down years ago. I stood up and straightened my blazer, leaving all 3 folders on Robert's desk. You have until Monday morning to decide which set of documents gets filed first. The partnership agreement is already drafted and waiting for your signature. Or you can continue believing that family loyalty is more important than competence and explain to David why his inheritance consists of criminal charges and bankruptcy proceedings. Robert's voice cracked as he called after me. Jennifer, please. We can discuss this reasonably. I paused at the door and turned back to face him. Robert, I've been discussing this reasonably for 8 years. Every time you dismissed my expertise, every time you credited my work to family members, every time you made it clear that my gender disqualified me from leadership regardless of my qualifications. I tried reasoning. Now we're negotiating. That weekend, David was unusually quiet. He'd gotten the call from his father Saturday morning and spent most of the day locked in his home office, presumably reviewing the documents I compiled about his own performance. When he finally emerged, his face was pale and his usual cocky confidence had evaporated. Dad says you want to be partners, he said, unable to meet my eyes. I've earned partnership, I replied. The question is whether you want to earn it too, or whether you prefer to explain to unemployment services why your family's construction company was shut down for fraud. David sank into our kitchen chair, his head in his hands. I never meant for any of this to happen. I wanted to prove I belonged in the business. You do belong in the business, I said, surprising him. You have good instincts for client relations when you focus, and you understand the local market better than anyone. But you don't belong in charge until you understand that expertise matters more than last names. Monday morning, I arrived at the office to find the partnership agreement signed and notarized on my desk, along with new business cards identifying me as Jennifer Chen, partner and chief operating officer. Robert's door was closed, and his assistant informed me he'd be working from home for the rest of the week. David appeared in my doorway around 10 o'clock, looking nervous and uncertain. So what happens now? Now you learn the business properly, I said, gesturing to the chair across from my new desk. Starting with why the Harbor Point project actually succeeded and why your Riverside Mall project nearly bankrupted us. Over the following months, the transformation at Chen Construction was remarkable. With proper oversight and accountability, our project completion rate improved by 40%, our safety violations dropped to 0, and our profit margins increased dramatically. David, freed from the pressure of living up to impossible expectations, began showing real aptitude for client relations and strategic planning. Robert eventually returned to the office, but in a significantly diminished capacity. The evidence I compiled had made it clear that while he might not have been directly involved in the embezzlement, his willful ignorance and poor oversight had enabled it to continue for years. He now reported to me on all financial decisions, a reversal of power that he accepted with surprising grace. 6 months later, I sat in my office reviewing proposals for our largest contract yet, a $15 million municipal project that would cement Chen Construction's reputation as the premier commercial builder in the region. David knocked on my door, carrying coffee and a folder of his own. The city planning committee loved our presentation, he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. They were especially impressed with our safety record and cost control procedures. I smiled, remembering Robert's words about clients wanting to work with someone who understood strength and tradition. He'd been right about that in a way. Clients did want strength, the strength that came from competence, integrity, and proven results. They wanted tradition, the tradition of honest business practices and professional excellence. Good work on the client relations, I said, meaning it. Your preparation made the difference. David grinned, looking more confident than I'd seen him in years. I learned from the best, even if it took me a while to figure out who that was. As the afternoon sun streamed through my office window, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. 8 years of fighting for recognition, documenting every slight and every success, building an unassailable case for my own worth. It had been exhausting and infuriating, but it had also been necessary. Sometimes the most powerful response to being underestimated is simply being undeniably excellent. And sometimes, when excellence isn't enough, you have to be prepared to prove that competence and integrity matter more than family loyalty and traditional expectations. The company Robert built on handshake deals and old boy networks was gone. In its place stood Chen Construction as I'd reimagined it: professional, profitable, and built on the radical idea that the best person for the job should actually get the job. And for the first time in 8 years, I was exactly where I belonged.